So AI has axed a huge chunk of early career data analyst jobs. Why? Because these days, SQL is no longer a special skills. Everyone has these kinds of technical chops. So what actually differentiates those analysts who get hired? It's something that I don't really see many people teach, which is understanding business metrics. So today, I want to show you my 4-step KPIs framework that is going to be a mindset shift and show you how exactly to integrate business metrics in your interviews, your portfolios, and your resumes so that you can actually demonstrate this invaluable skill to hiring managers. And stick with me because I have an exciting announcement about my mentorship program that's opening now. If you're new here, I'm Christine. I'm a former data director and a hiring manager who helps people take the most direct path to working a job in data by learning how to think, speak, and operate like the top 1% of analysts out there. Let's dive in. So let's start with why metrics matter more than ever. Back in 2023, the distribution of what made a standout analyst look something like this. It was about 60% having technical skills, 30% was about doing insights and analysis, and the last 10% was this final touch of having professional polish, project management, and being able to speak well to stakeholders. Now, AI is really changing this distribution. Analysts who get hired now look a little bit different. It's about 60% about being able to generate insights and recommendations, 30% about having domain knowledge and understanding the metrics in that industry, and the last 10% is still that professional polish and being able to work well with stakeholders. The technical skills are basically a given, so I'm not even going to mention them here. From my perspective, the data analyst role is shifting more towards something like a data product manager. And this is someone who can connect the dots between stakeholders, decision makers, and engineers using their understanding of what's available in the data. And your ticket into that space is in understanding business metrics. Let me explain this. So here's my guide. You guys know I love a good framework. This is called the KPIS Framework, and it stands for Know Your Top 10, Practice Why They Matter, Imitate the Leaders, and Showcase them in your work. Know the top 10 metrics in the industry that you're interested in working in. And if you're not really sure what industry you want to focus on yet, you can always focus on marketing or finance metrics because every company has a marketing and a finance team. So for example, if you want to work in tech, you should be familiar with metrics like retention, churn, LTV, CAC, daily active users, monthly active users. This is all stuff that you can look up online or ideate with ChatGPT. I have just the resource for you if you want to shortcut your understanding of business metrics. It's a freebie that you can download below. Then practice why they matter. That means understand what stakeholders they tie to and why they actually matter to the bottom line of a company. So for example, with CAC, customer acquisition cost, you should know that it ties to a marketing team and it helps guide their ad spend. By imitating leaders, I mean that you want to be able to show that you belong by being able to speak the language of business metrics. You can start off by actually watching how other people talk about business metrics in that industry. So for example, by looking up earnings calls or reading earnings reports and looking at the news of the companies that you're interested in and seeing what numbers they report to the top line. And just remember that you don't have to be a data analyst working at a company to start speaking like someone who has real analytics experience. And then lastly, showcase them. By that, I mean you want to thread business metrics through every aspect of your job hunt process. So you want to show them in your resumes, you want to gear your portfolio projects towards insights about these metrics, and you also want to demonstrate them and use them to shine in the interview. Today, I want to start at the end and actually go through the showcase step so that you have a really clear understanding of exactly how to showcase these kinds of values through every aspect of your job hunt. Now, most portfolios actually die in the hands of hiring managers because they focus way too much on the technical tools instead of the final impact. But I'm gonna be super honest with you. Hiring managers care way more about your understanding of basic business metrics like LTV, CAC, churn, retention, conversion rates, rather than your ability to build really fancy machine learning models, especially for data analyst roles. Demonstrating clarity will always beat complexity. I can't tell you how many portfolios I've opened where I see 5 to 7 projects that all focus on SQL, data cleaning, or machine learning models without actually mentioning any business metrics, stakeholders, or final insights or recommendations. Let's dive into some examples. Okay, so first of all, thank you, Attila, for volunteering your portfolio for this review. Everything I'm gonna say to you is gonna be super direct in the effort of just being as helpful as possible. So this is Attila's portfolio, and you can see that his README is actually organized by technical tool. It's structured to have Python, and then we have SQL, and then we have Tableau. Now, right off the bat, that, this actually starts to look a little bit more like homework than the work of an experienced analyst because it's organized by tool instead of the stakeholder team or the relevant domain. I would have much rather seen something that was geared towards a finance or product or an operations team rather than just organizing it, demonstrating by what code you were using. Then in the actual projects, all the descriptions focus on what actually happened instead of the so what and why we used the tool and what metrics we were looking at. So for example, designed and implemented a fully automated ELT pipeline, developed a complete NLP pipeline, and then the SQL projects as well. Our aim is to clean our club membership table. We use the RFM model and we analyze insurance companies' customer data. Nowhere in this cover page do I see interesting insights or recommendations that would have been relevant to a hiring manager at a real company. Now, the reason why this is important is because hiring managers will probably look at your portfolio for like literally 10 seconds, if that. And so you only have a short period of time to really make an impression and demonstrate that value. Now, when I click into these projects, my hope is that it will at least surface some interesting insights and findings so that I know why you use these tools and what you discovered from this analysis. But when I click on the SQL project, so for example, target marketing for insurance companies, we start out really organized. So there's a project introduction, an executive summary, and a summary about the data set, which is great. But then the analysis outputs is actually all code. So I'm seeing a lot of SQL and I see the tables here, but as a stakeholder, I don't actually know what to do with this data. Now, the output of your analysis should not be anything technical. It should be visualizations, storytelling, and actual recommendations. And then same with the data cleaning project. So when I go here, I don't really care that you cleaned the data. I want to know what you did with the clean data and how that would be helpful to me. And so for example, this clean data portfolio project, the main output of the project is just the script that's being used to clean the table. But a hiring manager is not really going to be looking at your SQL syntax at this round of the interview. So Attila, my main feedback to you is to revisit some of your best projects in this list and actually look at the output of the data that you cleaned or that you analyzed and start bringing those insights and recommendations to the surface. By the way, if you want me to guide you through this process step by step and help you become a standout data analyst in 4 months or less, then check out my mentorship program below because spots have just opened for the next cohort. It is also much more effective to link to one really strong portfolio project in your resume, your LinkedIn, instead of leading to a cover page where a hiring manager has to click to like 5 different places to try to find your best project. So let me show you an example of this, which is actually by one of my students, Nick, who landed a job as a data reporting manager at a company called Abbott. Now, in this project, we immediately start off with the so what and the business metrics relevant to the data set. So sales trends analysis, we're going to look at revenue, order volume, and AOV, product level performance, loyalty program success, and regional comparisons. Then when I'm scrolling down, I can see that every visualization is actually focused on surfacing different analysis and insights rather than showing the technical work. All of the technical work is actually hidden in the SQL queries and the files linked at the top. But in this dashboard, for example, the North Star KPIs are super clear and the metrics are mentioned over and over again. And then every single visualization shows that there are different fluctuations in those business values that we're looking at. Notice that we're not talking about data cleaning. We're not talking about the functions that we use in Excel. We're actually talking about how the company is performing across different verticals like product, sales, the loyalty program, and regional comparisons. And then at the end, we have a recommendation section, which ties back to the business metrics that we identified as being important. So for example, 85% of orders, that's a metric, and 70% of revenue, another metric, comes from just 3 products. So diversifying the product portfolio is crucial. And this is what makes a portfolio look like you're an experienced analyst, not someone who's just doing a certification. Let's move on to the resume. The same mistake that I see in portfolio projects is the same mistake I usually see in resumes. The more you can really clearly showcase your understanding of business metrics in your resume, the more you'll stand out. The problem is that most people just overemphasize what they did in the technical tools. One of the best ways to do this is to have what I call a metrics first resume. Let me show you what I mean. So here's a typical data analyst resume that is almost guaranteed to get lost in the void. The bullets say completed a job simulation, used Excel to visualize on-premise clients, communicated observations, analyzed credit card fraud patterns using SQL, and collected and analyzed salary data. This resume isn't really going to stand out in a sea of other technical applicants. Instead, what you want to do is front load each bullet with a business metric or a quantified value. Now, I'm just going to caveat this first and say that the resume I'm showing here is a very strong resume because I just want to give you guys one of the best examples so you have a really clear North Star of what you could work towards. It is not expected that all of you guys will be able to have bullets like this, but again, I'm setting the bar high here. That's the whole point of this channel. And this is actually the resume of a student who just landed a data analyst job at Pandora. So he starts each bullet with the value like helped boost net sales by 500K, boosted conversion rates by 45%, and then developed ClickSense dashboards used by 80% of clients. Now, it's fair to say that it can be pretty hard to actually have these numbers off the top of your head or to have calculated them in a past job. So my rule of thumb is that as long as you can reasonably explain to someone about how you calculated this value or estimated it and the logic makes sense, then you're good. Hiring managers we're not actually looking for a massive value here, like 2x revenue. Even just having the metric on there helps us see that you understand the thinking of an analyst. So this could have been something like helped boost net sales by 1% or 2%, and it still would have been as effective. Some of you might not have worked in a corporate job that has these kinds of values, but notice how here this student also quantified something like the number of clients. You can even do something like the number of presentations, the size of the data set, or the number of different people on your team that you were working on meetings with. And if you're unable to list any metrics that are relevant to that industry, then it does mean that that role is probably not the right fit for you yet. And it would be better to apply your time and energy towards roles that better align with your experience or to build more experience so you're a better fit for those roles. Now let's talk about the last leg where your understanding of business metrics really needs to shine, and that is in the interview. Your understanding of business domain knowledge will most likely be tested either when talking about your projects in a live interview or in a take-home case study or a live business case study. So let me give you an example. Now, one question I can almost guarantee you will get asked is, tell me about a time you analyzed a large data set. What insights did you discover and what was the final outcome? Now, most data analysts will make the same mistake here by focusing a lot on the technical process and explaining what they did with the tools. But what we're really looking for is what kind of insights and business metrics you analyzed, why, and how you tell that story. So for example, instead of saying something like, I wrote SQL queries in BigQuery to look at sales trends for an e-commerce company, and I was using CTEs and window functions and multiple joins, you want to use something like the STAR framework to bring to light your process while balancing it with the kinds of metrics that you were looking at and why. So a better response would be, I analyzed 150,000 transaction records for an e-commerce company that had data from 2018 to 2024. And they wanted to look at their sales trends across a number of different regions. So I was looking at the monthly sales, monthly revenues, and monthly order counts across the top regions and slicing by the different countries to try to understand what countries were the main driver of the revenue dip that we saw at the end of 2020. And if you're talking about a portfolio project, you can still talk about what stakeholders this project would have been geared towards. So for example, saying something like, I ultimately discovered that US and Japan were the main drivers of that dip at the end of 2020. So with more recent data, we'd look to see if that same seasonality occurs. And if it does, I'd recommend to the marketing team to ramp up different marketing campaigns or marketing spend around those months to avoid the same dip. Now, as I mentioned in one of my previous videos, one of my students, Dennis, landed a job as a content strategy and insights analyst. And he got a live case study question where he was asked, how would you analyze the performance of a new radio show? What KPIs would you track and why? Now, most candidates would freeze because this is a very tricky question if you haven't prepared this kind of domain knowledge. But Dennis stood out because he understood metrics like listener retention, ad revenue impact, and session length. And he understood which stakeholders these metrics would tie back to. And that's what helped him land that job. So to leave you with some actionable next steps with the KPIs framework, start studying the top 10 metrics in the industries that you're interested in applying to, and then start practicing speaking about their stakeholders and how they relate to company goals, and imitate the way that experienced analysts or leaders in the industry actually talk about these metrics by researching news articles, publications, or seeing how they're referred to in earnings reports. And all throughout your data journey, make sure to showcase them in your resumes, your portfolio projects, and in your interview prep. I'm gonna go take a break from saying the word metrics now. It was great to see you guys in this video, and I hope to see you in the next one.